Marcus Thompson walked slowly up the stairs to his apartment. His feet hurt from standing all day at the grocery store. His back ached from loading boxes at the warehouse the night before. He had worked 16 hours in the last 2 days, but it still was not enough money. He stopped at his door and saw the white paper taped there. His heart sank. He knew what it was before he even read it. The big red letters at the top said, "Eviction Notice." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. Inside the apartment, his 12-year-old son Danny was doing homework at the kitchen table. The boy looked up and smiled when his father came in. Danny had his mother's bright eyes and warm smile. Marcus tried to smile back, but it was hard. "How was work, Dad?" Danny asked. "It was fine, son," Marcus lied. He folded the eviction notice and put it in his pocket. He did not want Danny to see it yet. Marcus went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes were red from being tired. His hair was messy. He looked older than his 34 years. 2 years ago, his wife Sarah had died in a car accident. Since then, everything had been falling apart. He remembered when Sarah was alive. She worked as a nurse at the hospital. Marcus had a good job at a construction company. They had a nice house with a yard where Danny could play. They were happy then. They had plans for the future, but when Sarah died, Marcus could not work for weeks. He was too sad and had to take care of Danny. The construction company fired him. They lost the house because they could not pay for it. Now they lived in this small apartment, and Marcus could barely pay for that. Marcus worked 2 jobs now. During the day, he worked at Pete's grocery store. At night, he worked at a warehouse moving boxes. But minimum wage jobs did not pay enough to live in the city. Rent was $800 a month. Food cost $200. The car needed gas and repairs. Danny needed clothes and school supplies. The money was never enough. Marcus walked back to the kitchen. Danny was still doing his math homework. The boy worked hard in school. He got good grades. He never complained about their small apartment or the fact that they ate pasta and rice most nights for dinner. "Dad, can you help me with this problem?" Danny asked. Marcus sat down next to his son. The math problem was about money. "How much change would you get if you bought something that cost $3.50 and you paid with a $5 bill?" Marcus almost laughed, but not in a happy way. If only real life was that simple. "You subtract $3.50 from $5, Marcus explained. "That gives you $1.50 change." "Thanks, Dad," Danny said. He wrote down the answer. After dinner, Marcus put Danny to bed. The boy's room was very small. It had just enough space for a bed and a small desk. Danny had put up pictures of his mother on the wall. He also had a picture of a mountain cabin that he had cut out from a magazine. "I like that picture," Danny had told Marcus once. "It looks peaceful. Maybe we could live somewhere like that someday." Marcus had not said anything then. How could he tell his son that they would probably never afford a place like that? Now Marcus sat alone in the living room. He took out the eviction notice and read it again. They had 48 hours to pay the rent or leave the apartment. Marcus had $127 in his bank account. The rent was $800. He was $673 short. Marcus felt panic rise in his chest. Where would they go? He had no family nearby. His parents had died when he was young. Sarah's parents lived far away and did not have much money either. He had a few friends, but they all had their own problems. He thought about calling his boss at the grocery store to ask for more hours. But the store was already struggling. Pete, the owner, had told Marcus that business was slow. There were no extra hours to give. Marcus opened his laptop computer. It was old and slow, but it still worked. Maybe he could find a cheaper apartment online. He looked at rental websites for over an hour. Everything was too expensive. Even the worst apartments cost more money than he had. He was about to close the laptop when he saw a different section of the website. It was for buying houses, not renting them. Marcus knew he could not buy a house, but he was curious. He clicked on the section that said under $1,000. Most of the listings were for empty land or houses that needed a lot of work. Marcus scrolled through page after page. Then he saw something strange. It was a listing for $50. $50. That was less than Marcus spent on gas in a week. He clicked on the listing. The title said, "Destroyed cabin on 2 acres, fire damage, needs complete renovation. Selling as is for $50 or best offer." The pictures showed a small wooden cabin that looked terrible. The roof had big holes in it. The walls were black, from fire. Windows were broken. It looked more like a pile of wood than a house. But it was on 2 acres of land. It was in Montana, far from the city. And it cost $50. Marcus had $50. He read the description again. The seller was an old woman whose husband had owned the cabin. The husband had died and she wanted to get rid of the property. She just wanted it gone. Marcus stared at the pictures for a long time. The cabin was in terrible shape. It had no electricity or water. It was hundreds of miles away from the city. It would need months of work to make it livable. It was crazy to even think about it. But what choice did he have? In 2 days, they would be on the street. At least the cabin was shelter. At least it was something. Marcus looked at the phone number in the listing. It was late, but maybe the woman would still be awake. His hand shook as he dialed the number. "Hello?" said an old woman's voice. "Hi, my name is Marcus Thompson. I saw your listing online for the cabin in Montana." "Oh," the woman said. She sounded surprised. "You are the first person to call. Most people probably think it is too much." "Work. Can you tell me more about it?" Marcus asked. The woman's name was Mrs. Henderson. Her husband had bought the cabin 20 years ago as a place to go fishing. 5 years ago, there had been a small fire that damaged it badly. Her husband had planned to fix it, but then he got sick and died. "I live in California now," Mrs. Henderson said. "I cannot take care of it. I just want someone to have it who will use it. Are you really interested?" Marcus looked around his small apartment. He looked at the eviction notice on the table. "Yes," he said. "I am very interested." They talked for 30 more minutes. Mrs. Henderson seemed like a nice woman. She said she could meet Marcus halfway between the city and the cabin if he really wanted to buy it. She would bring the deed and all the papers. After Marcus hung up the phone, he sat in the dark living room for a long time. Was he crazy? Was he making a huge mistake? The cabin was destroyed. They would have no neighbors, no stores nearby, no hospitals. Danny would have to change schools. They would be starting over with nothing, but they already had nothing. And in 2 days they would be homeless. Marcus made his decision. He would take this chance. He would buy the $50 cabin and try to make it work. It was their only hope. Marcus woke up early the next morning. He had not slept well. His mind was full of thoughts about the cabin and what he was planning to do. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, looking at the eviction notice again. Danny came out of his room rubbing his eyes. "Morning, Dad," he said. "Morning, buddy. Sit down. I need to talk to you about something important." Danny sat down and looked worried. Marcus had used that serious voice before when he had to tell Danny bad news. "Danny, we have to move out of this apartment," Marcus said gently. Danny's eyes got wide. "Why? What happened?" Marcus showed him the eviction notice. "I don't have enough money to pay the rent anymore. We have to leave in 2 days." Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Where will we go?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I found a place for us. It's different from here. Very different. It's a cabin in Montana." "Montana?" Danny said. "That's really far away." "Yes, it is. About 8 hours by car. The cabin needs a lot of work, but it's ours if we want it. We can buy it for $50. Danny looked confused. $50? That's not very much money. No, it's not. But the cabin is damaged. There was a fire. It needs to be fixed before we can live in it properly. Marcus showed Danny the pictures on his laptop. Danny stared at the burned cabin with the broken roof and blackened walls. "It looks really bad, Dad," Danny said quietly. "I know it does, but we can fix it together. It will take time and hard work, but we can make it into a real home." Danny was quiet for a long time. Marcus could see he was thinking hard about this. What about school? Danny asked. There's a school in the town near the cabin. It's smaller than your school here, but you'll make new friends. What about my friends here? Marcus felt his heart break a little. You can still talk to them on the phone and on the computer when we get internet set up. Danny nodded slowly. Do we have to do this? Marcus was honest with his son. Yes, we do. We don't have anywhere else to go. That afternoon, Marcus called his boss at the grocery store and told him he had to quit. Pete was sorry to see him go, but understood that Marcus had no choice. I wish I could pay you more, Pete said. You're a good worker. Marcus also called the warehouse and quit that job too. Then he started packing their things. They did not have much. Their clothes, some books, Danny's toys, a few pictures of Sarah, and some kitchen items. Everything fit in 10 boxes and 3 suitcases. That evening, Marcus and Danny drove to meet Mrs. Henderson. She had said she would meet them at a diner halfway between the city and the cabin. The drive took 4 hours. Mrs. Henderson was a small, gray-haired woman in her 70s. She was sitting in a booth at the back of the diner when they arrived. She had a folder full of papers on the table. You must be Marcus, she said, standing up to shake his hand. And this must be Danny. Yes, ma'am, Marcus said. Thank you for meeting us. They sat down and ordered food. Mrs. Henderson looked at Danny kindly. Are you excited about living in the mountains? She asked him. Danny shrugged. I guess so. It's going to be very different. It will be, Mrs. Henderson agreed. My husband loved that place. He said the air was clean and the stars were bright at night. He said it was peaceful. She opened her folder and showed them the papers. There was the deed to the property, some old tax records, and a map showing where the cabin was located. The cabin sits on 2 acres of land, she explained. There's a well for water, but I don't know if it still works. The nearest neighbor is about 2 miles away. The town is 20 miles down the mountain. Marcus looked at the deed. It was real. For $50, he would own 2 acres of land and whatever was left of the cabin. Are you sure about this? Mrs. Henderson asked. It's going to be a lot of work. Maybe more work than you think? Marcus looked at Danny, then back at Mrs. Henderson. We're sure, he said. Mrs. Henderson nodded. My husband would be happy to know someone is going to try to bring that place back to life. Marcus gave her $50 in cash. She signed the deed over to him. Just like that, he owned property in Montana. They said goodbye to Mrs. Henderson and drove back to the city. It was late when they got home. Marcus and Danny spent the evening finishing their packing. The next morning, they loaded everything into Marcus's old Honda Civic. The car was 12 years old and had over 200,000 miles on it, but it still ran okay. Marcus hoped it would make the long drive to Montana. Before they left, Marcus walked through the empty apartment one more time. This had been their home for almost 2 years. It wasn't much, but it had been theirs. Now they were leaving with no idea what they would find when they got to Montana. Danny was waiting by the car. He had his backpack and a small box of his favorite things. Marcus could see that he was trying to be brave, but his son was scared. Marcus was scared too, but he couldn't show it. Ready? Marcus asked. Ready, Danny said, though his voice was small. They got in the car and started driving west. For the first few hours, they passed through cities and suburbs that Danny knew. Then the landscape started to change. There were more farms and fewer buildings. The roads got smaller and the hills got bigger. They stopped for lunch at a small restaurant in a tiny town. The waitress was friendly and asked where they were going. Montana, Marcus told her. That's a long way, she said. You folks moving there? Yes, we are, Marcus said. Well, good luck to you, the waitress said. Montana's beautiful country. After lunch, they kept driving. The landscape changed even more. There were mountains in the distance now. The air felt different, cleaner somehow. Danny fell asleep in the passenger seat. Marcus drove and thought about what they were doing. He was taking his son hundreds of miles away from everything they knew to live in a burned cabin with no electricity or running water. Most people would say he was crazy. Maybe he was crazy. But what choice did he have? They had been about to be homeless. At least now they had land. At least now they had a chance to build something. As the sun started to set, they reached the town nearest to their cabin. It was small, maybe a few hundred people. There was a main street with a few stores, a gas station, a post office, and a small school. Everyone they saw looked at their car with curiosity. New people probably didn't come to town very often. Marcus stopped at the gas station to fill up the car and ask for directions to their property. The man working there was friendly, but looked surprised when Marcus told him where they were going. "You bought the old Henderson place?" the man asked. "Yes, we did," Marcus said. The man shook his head. "That place has been empty for years. It's in pretty bad shape from what I hear." "We know," Marcus said. "We're going to fix it up." The man gave them directions. "It's about 20 miles up the mountain road. Be careful driving at night. The road has a lot of curves." Marcus thanked him and got back in the car. Danny was awake now, looking out the window at the small town. "This is where I'll go to school?" Danny asked. "Probably," Marcus said. "What do you think?" "It's really small," Danny said. "Yes, it is. Is that okay?" Danny thought about it. "I guess so." Everyone seemed nice. They drove up the mountain road as darkness fell. The road was narrow and winding, just like the gas station man had said. Marcus drove slowly and carefully. There were no streetlights up here, and the forest on both sides of the road was thick and dark. Finally, after what felt like hours, they found the mailbox that marked their property. Marcus turned onto a dirt road that was full of holes and rocks. The car bounced and shook as they drove slowly toward their new home. Then, in the headlights of the car, they saw it. The cabin looked even worse in person than it had in the pictures. It was small and crooked. The roof had huge holes in it. The walls were black from the fire. Windows were broken or missing completely. Marcus stopped the car and turned off the engine. They sat in silence for a moment, staring at what was supposed to be their new home. "Dad," Danny said quietly, "are we really going to live here?" Marcus looked at his son and then at the destroyed cabin. For a moment he thought about turning the car around and driving back to the city. But they had no money and nowhere to go. "Yes," Marcus said, "we're really going to live here. And we're going to make it beautiful." Marcus and Danny sat in the car staring at their new home in the darkness. The headlights showed every broken board and hole in the roof. The cabin looked like it might fall down if the wind blew too hard. "Maybe it looks better in the daylight," Danny said, trying to sound hopeful. Marcus squeezed his son's shoulder. "Maybe it does," he said, though he didn't really believe it. They got out of the car to look around. Marcus had brought a flashlight, and he shined it on the cabin. The front door was hanging open on broken hinges. The porch had rotted boards that looked dangerous to walk on. Inside the cabin, it was even worse. The floor had holes where you could see down to the ground below. The walls were covered in black soot from the fire. There was no furniture left. Animals had been living inside for years. The smell was terrible. "We can't sleep in here tonight," Marcus said. "Where will we sleep?" Danny asked. Marcus looked back at their car. "I guess we'll sleep in the car tonight. Tomorrow we can start cleaning up." They went back to the car and tried to make beds in the front and back seats. It was cold up in the mountains, much colder than it had been in the city. They had brought blankets, but they were thin and not very warm. Danny curled up in the back seat with his jacket on. "Dad, I'm scared," he whispered. Marcus reached back and patted his son's leg. "I know, buddy, I'm scared too, but we're going to be okay, I promise." They both tried to sleep, but it was hard. The car was uncomfortable, and every little sound from the forest made them jump. Owls hooted in the trees. Something rustled in the bushes nearby. Neither of them slept very well. When the sun came up, Marcus felt stiff and tired. Danny was already awake, looking out the window at their property in the daylight. "It's actually kind of pretty here," Danny said. Marcus looked around. Danny was right. The cabin was still a disaster, but the land around it was beautiful. They were surrounded by tall pine trees. Mountains rose up in the distance. The air smelled clean and fresh. Birds were singing in the trees. "You're right," Marcus said. "It is pretty." They got out of the car and stretched. Marcus looked at the cabin again in the daylight. It was still terrible, but maybe not quite as hopeless as it had seemed in the dark. The cabin was small, probably just 2 or 3 rooms. The roof had several big holes, but some parts of it were still good. The stone fireplace in the center looked solid and undamaged. Some of the walls could probably be saved. "Okay," Marcus said. "Let's see what we're working with." They walked carefully into the cabin. The floor creaked and bounced under their feet. Marcus tested each board before putting his full weight on it. Some of the floorboards were rotten and would need to be replaced, but others seemed okay. The cabin had 3 rooms. There was a main room with the fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 1 bedroom. It wasn't much space, but it would be enough for the 2 of them. Marcus found some old buckets in what was left of a shed outside. There was a well on the property, just like Mrs. Henderson had said. Marcus lowered a bucket down and was happy to find that there was still water. He pulled up a bucket and smelled it. It seemed clean. "At least we have water," he told Danny. They spent the morning making a list of everything that needed to be done. It was a very long list. They needed to fix the roof, replace the floor, clean the walls, put in new windows, and somehow get electricity to the cabin. "How are we going to pay for all this?" Danny asked. It was a good question. Marcus had less than $80 left after buying the cabin and gas for the trip. He had no job and no way to make money way up here in the mountains. "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted, "but we'll figure it out." For lunch, they ate sandwiches they had brought from the city. They sat on a fallen log near the cabin and looked at the mountains. "Dad, do you think Mom would like it here?" Danny asked. Marcus thought about Sarah. She had loved nature and hiking. She had always wanted to live somewhere peaceful and quiet. "I think she would love it," Marcus said. "She always said the city was too noisy and crowded." That afternoon they drove down to the town to buy some basic supplies. Marcus bought a tarp to cover the holes in the roof, some nails, a hammer, and a few other tools. He also bought some canned food and more blankets. The bill came to $65, which left him with only $15. The woman at the store was curious about them. "You folks the ones who bought the old Henderson place?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said. "Well, good luck to you. That place has been empty for a long time. The whole town will be interested to see what you do with it." When they got back to the cabin, Marcus climbed up on the roof to put the tarp over the biggest holes. The roof was more damaged than he had thought. Several of the support beams were burned and would need to be replaced. But at least the tarp would keep the rain out for now. Danny helped by handing him nails and holding one end of the tarp. Working together made Marcus feel a little better about their situation. That evening, they built a small fire outside the cabin. They cooked some canned soup over the fire and sat eating it as the stars came out. Marcus had never seen so many stars. In the city, you could only see a few stars because of all the lights. Here, the whole sky was full of them. "Wow," Danny said, looking up. "There are so many." "Your mom used to love looking at the stars," Marcus said. "She knew the names of all the constellations." They slept in the car again that night, but it was a little easier because they were both so tired from working all day. The next morning, Marcus woke up with a plan. He needed to find a way to make money while they fixed up the cabin. Maybe he could find work in the town, even if it was just part-time. After breakfast, they drove back to town. Marcus went to every business on the main street, asking if anyone needed help. Most people were friendly but said they didn't have any work available. Finally, at the last stop, a man named Bob, who owned a small hardware store, said he might have something. "I could use some help a few days a week," Bob said. "Moving boxes, helping customers, that sort of thing. I can't pay much, but it's something." "I'll take it," Marcus said quickly. Bob looked at Danny. "What about the boy? School starts next week." "He'll be in school," Marcus said. "I can work while he's there." Bob nodded. "Okay. You can start Monday, $8 an hour, 3 days, a week." It wasn't much money, but it was better than nothing. $8 an hour for 3 days a week would give them about $100 a week. It would be enough to buy food and maybe some materials to fix the cabin slowly. On the way back to the cabin, they stopped at the school to register Danny. The principal was a nice woman named Mrs. Garcia. She seemed surprised that new people were moving to the area. "We don't get many new students," she said. "Danny will be one of only 15 kids in his grade." Danny looked nervous. "Only 15? Don't worry," Mrs. Garcia said kindly. "Everyone here is very friendly. You'll make friends quickly." That weekend, Marcus and Danny worked hard on the cabin. They cleared out all the old trash and animal droppings. They swept and scrubbed the walls that could be saved. They boarded up the broken windows with pieces of wood. The work was hard and progress was slow. Every time they fixed one thing, they found 2 more things that were broken. But little by little, the cabin started to look a tiny bit better. Sunday night, they made another fire outside and cooked their dinner. Danny seemed sad, and Marcus knew why. Tomorrow he would start at a new school where he didn't know anyone. "Are you worried about school?" Marcus asked. Danny nodded. "What if the other kids don't like me? What if they think I'm weird because we live in a broken cabin?" "Danny, you're a good kid. You're smart and funny and kind. The other kids will see that too. But we're so different from everyone else here. We don't have a real house or much money." Marcus put his arm around his son. "Sometimes being different isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it makes you stronger." Danny leaned against his father. "I miss Mom," he said quietly. "I miss her too," Marcus said, "but she would be proud of us for not giving up. She would be proud of us for trying to make a new life here." They sat by the fire until it got dark, watching the stars come out one by one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they were together, and they had a place that was theirs. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As they got ready to sleep in the car one more time, Marcus looked at the cabin. With the tarp on the roof and some of the trash cleared away, it almost looked like it could become a real home someday. Almost. "Tomorrow, we keep building our new life," Marcus said to himself as he closed his eyes. One day at a time. Monday morning came too quickly. Marcus woke up in the car feeling nervous about Danny's first day at the new school. Danny was quiet as they got ready, eating breakfast in silence. "You're going to do great," Marcus told his son as they drove down the mountain to town. "I hope so," Danny said, but he didn't sound sure. The school was small, just one building with 6 classrooms. Mrs. Garcia met them at the front door and introduced Danny to his teacher, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson seemed nice, and he showed Danny around the classroom. "We'll take good care of him," Mrs. Garcia told Marcus. Marcus hugged Danny goodbye. "I'll pick you up at 3 o'clock, he said. Danny nodded and waved as Marcus left for his first day at the hardware store. Bob's Hardware was a small store with shelves packed full of tools, nails, screws, and everything else people needed to fix things. Bob showed Marcus around and explained what he needed him to do. "Mostly just help customers find what they need," Bob said. "Move some boxes in the back. Keep the shelves organized. Nothing too complicated." Marcus worked hard all morning. It felt good to have a job again, even if it was only part-time. At lunch, Bob sat with him and asked about the cabin. "That place has been empty for years," Bob said. "The whole town has been wondering who would be brave enough to try to fix it up." "Is it really that bad?" Marcus asked. "Well, let's just say it's going to be a big project," Bob said with a smile. "But if anyone can do it, it's someone who really needs it to work." When Marcus picked up Danny from school that afternoon, his son looked happier than he had in days. "How was it?" Marcus asked. "Actually pretty good," Danny said. "The kids were nice. My teacher is cool. And guess what? There's a girl in my class named Emma who knows a lot about fixing old houses. Her dad is a carpenter." "That's great," Marcus said. "Did you tell her about our cabin?" "Yeah, and she wants to see it sometime. She said her dad might be able to give us some advice." On the drive back up the mountain, Danny told Marcus all about his day. He had made friends with Emma and 2 boys named Jake and Sam. The classes were smaller than at his old school. but the teachers gave each student more personal attention. "I think I'm going to like it here," Danny said. That evening, they worked on the cabin until it got dark. Marcus had bought some lumber with his first day's pay, and they started replacing some of the worst floorboards. The work was slow, but they were making progress. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Marcus worked at the hardware store 3 days a week. Danny went to school and made more friends. Every evening and weekend, they worked on the cabin together. Slowly, the cabin started to look better. They fixed the floor so it was safe to walk on. They replaced 2 of the windows. Marcus learned how to do basic electrical work by watching videos on his phone when he could get a signal. Emma came to visit one Saturday with her father, Tom. Tom was a big, friendly man with calloused hands and kind eyes. He walked around the cabin, looking at everything carefully. "You've done good work so far," Tom told Marcus. "The bones of this place are solid. It's going to take time, but you can definitely make it livable." Tom gave Marcus lots of helpful advice about what to fix first and how to do things the right way. He even offered to let Marcus borrow some of his tools. "We look out for each other around here," Tom said. "That's how small towns work." Emma and Danny explored the property while the adults talked. They climbed on rocks and looked for interesting things in the forest. Danny seemed happy in a way that Marcus hadn't seen since before Sarah died. "Dad, come look at this," Danny called. From near the cabin, Marcus and Tom walked over to where Danny and Emma were standing by the stone fireplace. "Look at these stones," Danny said, pointing to part of the fireplace. "Some of them seem loose." Marcus looked where Danny was pointing. A few of the stones did look different from the others. They were set a little deeper into the mortar, and the edges looked like they had been chipped at. "Probably just settling over the years," Tom said. "Old fireplaces do that sometimes." But Danny kept staring at the stones. "They look like someone made marks on purpose," he said. Marcus looked closer. Danny was right. There were small scratches in the mortar between some of the stones. They looked too neat to be accidental damage. "Interesting," Tom said. "Maybe the original owner marked his work somehow." Emma ran her finger along one of the scratches. "It looks like someone was trying to make a pattern," she said. "We should investigate," Danny said excitedly. "Let's focus on getting the roof completely fixed first," Marcus said. "Then we can worry about mysteries." But Danny couldn't stop thinking about the fireplace. Over the next week, every time they worked on the cabin, he spent time looking at those stones. He counted them, measured them, and tried to figure out what the scratches might mean. "Dad, I really think there's something special about these stones," Danny said one evening. "Like what?" Marcus asked. He was tired from work and wanted to focus on fixing the leaky part of the roof. "I don't know, but look at this." Danny showed Marcus a piece of paper where he had drawn the pattern of scratches. "It's not random. Someone made this on purpose." Marcus looked at Danny's drawing. His son was right. The scratches did form a pattern, almost like a code or a map. "What do you think it means?" Marcus asked. "I don't know yet," Danny said, "but I want to find out." That weekend, they had made enough progress on the cabin that they were finally able to sleep inside instead of in the car. They set up sleeping bags on the floor of the main room. It wasn't comfortable, but it was better than the car. Marcus lay awake that first night listening to the sounds of their new home. The wind in the trees outside, the settling of the old wooden walls, the occasional hoot of an owl. Danny was sleeping peacefully next to him. For the first time in months, Marcus felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. They had a roof over their heads that they owned. Danny was happy at school and making friends. Marcus had a job that paid enough for food and basic supplies. They were slowly but surely making the cabin into a real home. Sunday morning, Danny woke up excited. "Dad, I had a dream about the fireplace," he said. "What kind of dream?" "I dreamed that the loose stones were hiding something important. Something that would help us." Marcus smiled. "It was just a dream, buddy." "Maybe," Danny said. "But what if it wasn't? What if there really is something behind those stones?" Marcus looked at his son's eager face. Danny had been so good about all the changes in their life. He had left his friends, started at a new school, and worked hard on the cabin without complaining. Maybe it was time to indulge his curiosity about the fireplace. "Tell you what," Marcus said. "If you help me finish fixing the front porch today, we can take a closer look at those stones this evening." Danny's face lit up. "Really?" "Really. But we have to be careful. We don't want to damage the fireplace." They spent the day working on the porch, replacing rotten boards and making sure the steps were safe. Danny worked harder than ever, excited about the possibility of solving the mystery of the fireplace. As the sun started to set, they finished the porch work. Danny ran inside to get the flashlight. "Okay," Marcus said. "Let's see what you've been so curious about." They knelt down in front of the fireplace and looked closely at the stones Danny had been studying. In the beam of the flashlight, the scratches in the mortar were more visible. Marcus gently pushed on one of the stones. It moved. "Slightly. It is loose," he said, surprised. Danny's eyes got wide. "Try to pull it out." Marcus worked the stone back and forth gently. After a few minutes, it came free from the wall. Behind it was a dark space. "There's something back there," Danny whispered. Marcus shined the flashlight into the hole. There was definitely a space behind the stones, bigger than they had expected. "What do you think is in there?" Danny asked. Marcus looked at his son's excited face. "I don't know," he said, "but I guess we're about to find out." Marcus and Danny stared at the dark hole behind the loose stone. The flashlight beam showed that the space went back farther than they had expected. "Should we try to take out more stones?" Danny asked, his voice full of excitement. Marcus thought, for a moment. "Let's be very careful. We don't want to damage the fireplace or hurt ourselves." They worked together to remove 2 more stones. Each one came out easier than the last, as if they had been designed to be removable. The hole was now big enough for Marcus to reach his arm inside. "I can feel something," Marcus said as he reached into the space. "It feels like fabric or cloth." He carefully pulled out a bundle wrapped in what looked like old canvas. The bundle was heavy and felt like it had several things inside it. Danny bounced on his toes with excitement. "What is it? What's in there?" Marcus set the bundle down on the floor carefully. The canvas was old and yellowed, but it had protected whatever was inside from moisture and damage. "Let's open it," Marcus said. They unwrapped the canvas slowly. Inside was another layer of wrapping made from oilcloth. When they opened that, they found something that made them both gasp. There were paintings, several of them, wrapped individually in more oilcloth. The first one they unwrapped showed a mountain landscape that looked just like the view from their cabin. The colors were bright and beautiful, and the painting looked professional. "Wow," Danny whispered. "Someone hid paintings in our fireplace." Marcus unwrapped the second painting. This one showed a forest scene with sunlight streaming through the trees. It was signed in the bottom corner with the name W. Chen. "Who's W. Chen?" Danny asked. "I don't know," Marcus said. "Let's see what else is in here." They found 5 more paintings, all signed by W. Chen. Each one was beautiful and showed scenes of nature around the Montana mountains. At the bottom of the bundle, they found a small leather journal. Marcus opened the journal carefully. The pages were yellow with age, but the writing was still clear. On the first page, someone had written, "Property of William Chen, 1954. 1954, Marcus said. "These have been hidden for over 70 years. They read the first few pages of the journal together. William Chen had written about coming to the cabin to paint and to get away from the busy world. He wrote about the beauty of the mountains and how peaceful it was to create art in such a quiet place. "Listen to this," Marcus said, reading from the journal. "I have decided to hide my best work here until the world is ready to understand what I am trying to create. The critics in the city say my paintings are worthless, but I believe someday people will see their true value." Danny looked at the paintings, spread out on the floor. "Do you think they're valuable now?" "I don't know," Marcus said, "but they're definitely beautiful." They read more of the journal. William Chen had written about his struggles as an artist. No one wanted to buy his paintings. Art galleries refused to show his work. He was poor and discouraged, but he kept painting because he loved it. He sounds like he was sad, Danny said. Yes, but he never gave up, Marcus said. Even when no one believed in him, he kept creating beautiful art. The last entry in the journal was dated 1987. William Chen wrote that he was old and sick, and he didn't think he would live much longer. He hoped that someday someone would find his hidden paintings and appreciate them. He died here in the cabin, Marcus realized. That's probably when Mrs. Henderson's husband bought the property. They looked at the paintings again with new respect. These were the life's work of a man who had died thinking his art was worthless. Dad, do you think these might be worth money now? Danny asked. Marcus studied the paintings more carefully. They were really very good. The colors were rich. The brushwork was skilled, and each painting captured something special about the Montana landscape. Maybe, Marcus said, some artists become famous after they die. People sometimes realize later that their work was actually very good. Danny got excited. We should find out. We could look up W. Chen on the internet. Marcus looked around their cabin. They had electricity now, but they still didn't have internet service. The nearest place with reliable internet was the library in town. We'll go to the library tomorrow after school, Marcus said. But Danny, we shouldn't get our hopes up too much. Even if these paintings are worth something, it probably isn't very much. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about William Chen and the paintings hidden in their fireplace. What if they were worth money? Real money? Enough to help them finish fixing the cabin properly? But he tried not to think about it too much. They had been disappointed too many times before. It was better to expect nothing and be surprised than to expect too much and be crushed. The next day felt like the longest day ever. Marcus had trouble concentrating at work, and Danny later said he couldn't focus in school either. Finally, 3 o'clock came and they drove to the library. The librarian, a kind older woman named Mrs. Patterson, helped them use the computer. They searched for William Chen artist and waited for the results. What they found made them both sit in stunned silence. William Chen was listed on several art websites. The first site they clicked on said William Chen, 1920-1987, American landscape painter whose work has gained significant recognition since his death. Chen's paintings are now considered important examples of mid-century American regional art. Look at this, Danny whispered, pointing to another part of the screen. There was a news article from just 2 years ago with the headline, Forgotten Artist William Chen's Work Sells for Record Prices at Auction. Marcus read the article with growing amazement. A William Chen painting had sold at auction in New York for $350,000. Another had sold for $280,000. Art collectors were actively searching for Chen's work because so few of his paintings had been found. Dad, Danny said quietly, do you see what this says? Marcus read the paragraph Danny was pointing to. It said that art experts believed Chen had created approximately 50 paintings during his career, but only 12 had been found and authenticated. The article said that Chen's remaining work was considered lost and might never be found. We found 7 paintings, Danny said. If they're real, they could be worth... Marcus did the math in his head. 7 paintings worth maybe $300,000 each on average. That would be over $2 million. That can't be right, Marcus said. We must be missing something. They printed out the article and several others about William Chen. The more they read, the more it seemed like their discovery might be incredibly valuable. On the drive back to the cabin, they were both quiet. It was too much to believe, too much to hope for. Dad, what if it's real? Danny finally asked. What if we really found something worth millions of dollars? Marcus pulled over to the side of the road and looked at his son. Danny, even if these paintings are real and valuable, we have to be very careful. First, we need to prove they're authentic. That means having experts examine them. Second, we need to figure out the legal side of things, make sure we have the right to sell them. But if everything works out, our lives could change completely. Marcus said. But we can't count on that yet. We have to take this one step at a time. When they got back to the cabin, they looked at the paintings with new eyes. Were these really the lost works of a famous artist? Had they stumbled onto a fortune that had been hidden for decades? Marcus picked up William Chen's journal and read the last entry again. The old artist had written about hoping someone would someday find his work and understand its value. Well, Mr. Chen, Marcus said quietly, I think we understand. That evening, they carefully wrapped the paintings back up and put them in a safe place. Marcus called Tom, Emma's father, and asked if he could recommend a lawyer in the area. Legal trouble? Tom asked, sounding concerned. No, nothing like that, Marcus said. We just need some advice about something we found. Tom gave him the name of a lawyer in the nearest big town. Sarah Mitchell. She's honest and smart. She'll treat you fair. Before they went to bed, Danny asked, Dad, if the paintings are worth a lot of money, what will we do? Marcus thought about it. First, we'll finish making this cabin into a proper home. Then we'll make sure you can go to college someday. After that, Marcus smiled. After that, we'll figure out how to help other people the way Mr. Chen's paintings helped us. Danny nodded. I think Mr. Chen would like that. Marcus agreed. Somehow, he felt like William Chen had left those paintings there for exactly this purpose, to help a family in need find their way to a better life. But first, they had to prove the paintings were real. And that was going to be a challenge all its own. The next morning, Marcus called the lawyer Tom had recommended. Sarah Mitchell sounded professional but friendly on the phone. When Marcus explained that he needed advice about some artwork he had found, she agreed to meet with him. I have to drive 2 hours to get to her office, Marcus told Danny over breakfast. Do you want to come with me, or would you rather stay with Emma's family today? Can I come with you? Danny asked. I want to hear what she says about the paintings. They drove to the city early Saturday morning, taking 3 of the paintings with them. Marcus had wrapped them carefully in blankets and put them in the trunk of the car. Sarah Mitchell's office was in a tall building downtown. She was a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and a warm smile. She seemed surprised when Marcus and Danny walked in carrying the wrapped paintings. You found these where? She asked after Marcus told her the whole story. Hidden behind stones in our fireplace, Marcus said. The previous owner must have put them there. Sarah looked at the paintings carefully. These look professionally done, she said. And you said you researched this William Chen online. Marcus showed her the printed articles from the library. Sarah read them with growing interest. If these are authentic William Chen paintings, they could indeed be very valuable, she said. But the key word is if. You'll need to have them authenticated by art experts. How do we do that? Danny asked. There are people called art authenticators, Sarah explained. They're experts who can tell if a painting is real or fake. They look at the paint, the canvas, the style, and compare it to other known works by the artist. Marcus felt his heart sink. That sounds expensive. It can be, Sarah said. But in a case like this where the potential value is so high, you might be able to find an authenticator who will work on a contingency basis. What does that mean? Danny asked. It means they only get paid if the paintings turn out to be real and valuable, Sarah said. They take a percentage of the sale price instead of charging you up front. Sarah made some phone calls while Marcus and Danny waited. After about 30 minutes, she had good news. I found someone who might be able to help, she said. Dr. Elizabeth Hartman in Denver. She's one of the top authentication experts in the country. She's willing to look at your paintings and give you a preliminary opinion for free. Marcus felt relieved. When can we see her? She's flying to Seattle next week for another case, but she said she could stop here on the way if you can meet her Wednesday. They made arrangements for Dr. Hartman to come to Sarah's office Wednesday afternoon. Marcus would have to miss a day of work, but Bob said he understood. This could change your whole life, Bob said when Marcus explained the situation. I hope those paintings are the real thing. The days until Wednesday dragged by slowly. Marcus tried to focus on work and on continuing to improve the cabin, but his mind kept wandering to the paintings. Danny had trouble concentrating at school too. What if they're fake? Danny asked one evening. Then we're no worse off than we were before we found them, Marcus said. We still have our cabin, we still have each other, and we're still building. Good life here. But what if they're real? Marcus smiled. Then we're very lucky and William Chen's paintings finally get the recognition they deserve. Wednesday morning, they drove back to the city with all 7 paintings carefully packed in the car. Dr. Hartman was waiting at Sarah's office when they arrived. Dr. Hartman was a tall, serious woman with sharp eyes and gray hair, pulled back in, a tight bun. She wore white gloves as she carefully unwrapped each painting. Interesting, she murmured as she looked at the first painting. She pulled out a magnifying glass and studied the brushwork closely. For the next hour, Dr. Hartman examined each painting in detail. She looked at the backs of the canvases, studied the signatures, and even took small samples of paint from the edges to test. Marcus and Danny sat quietly, barely breathing as they watched her work. Finally, Dr. Hartman set down her magnifying glass and looked at them. Gentlemen, she said, I have some remarkable news. Based on my preliminary examination, I believe these are authentic William Chen paintings. Marcus felt dizzy. Danny grabbed his arm. Are you sure? Marcus asked. I'm about 90% certain, Dr. Hartman said. The brushwork, the paint composition, the canvas type, and the style all match Chen's known work. The signatures appear genuine. To be completely certain, I would need to do more detailed testing, but I'm confident enough to recommend that you proceed with a full authentication. What does that mean for their value? Sarah asked. Dr. Hartman considered this carefully. The market for William Chen's work has been very strong. Based on recent sales, I would estimate that this collection could be worth between $4 and $6 million. The room went completely silent. Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. $6 million. It was more money than he had ever imagined having. However, Dr. Hartman continued, there are some important steps you need to take. First, you need full authentication, which will take several weeks and cost about $10,000. Second, you need to establish clear ownership of the paintings. What do you mean? Marcus asked. You need to prove that you have the legal right to sell these paintings, Sarah explained. Since you found them on property you legally own, you probably do have that right, but we need to document everything properly. Dr. Hartman agreed to do the full authentication. She said she would need to take the paintings to her lab in Denver for detailed analysis. I understand this is difficult, she said, seeing the worried look on Marcus's face. You're being asked to trust me with something potentially worth millions of dollars. I can provide references and insurance documentation to prove that your paintings will be safe. Sarah helped Marcus review Dr. Hartman's credentials and insurance. Everything checked out. Dr. Hartman was legitimate and well-respected in the art world. How long will the authentication take? Danny asked. About 6 weeks, Dr. Hartman said. I'll send you regular updates on my progress. They made arrangements for Dr. Hartman to transport the paintings to Denver. Marcus signed several legal documents giving her permission to authenticate the work. On the drive back to the cabin, Marcus and Danny were both quiet for a long time. Dad, is this really happening? Danny finally asked. I think it is, Marcus said. But we need to be patient. 6 weeks is a long time and anything could happen. What if someone finds out and tries to steal the paintings? That's why we're having Dr. Hartman keep them safe during the authentication, Marcus said, and we're not going to tell anyone else about this until everything is official. When they got home, the cabin felt different somehow. It was still the same small, partially fixed building, but now it represented something more. It was the place where their lives had changed forever. That evening, they sat by the fireplace where they had found the paintings. The stones had been put back in place, but the hiding spot was empty now. I keep thinking about William Chen, Danny said. He was so sad that no one appreciated his art when he was alive. But now people will know how talented he was, Marcus said. His paintings will be in museums and galleries where everyone can see them. Do you think he would be happy about that? Marcus thought about the journal entries they had read. William Chen had written about wanting his art to be appreciated someday. I think he would be very happy, Marcus said. And I think he would be glad that his paintings helped a family in need. Danny nodded. We're going to finish fixing up the cabin, right? Even if we have lots of money? Absolutely, Marcus said. This is our home now. This is where we belong. The next 6 weeks were the longest of their lives. Marcus continued working at the hardware store, and Danny went to school every day, but both of them were thinking about the paintings. Dr. Hartman sent updates every week. The paint analysis looked good. The canvas matched other Chen works. The brushwork was consistent with his style. Finally, after what felt like forever, Dr. Hartman called with the final results. Congratulations, she said. All 7 paintings have been authenticated as genuine William Chen originals. You own one of the most significant collections of his work ever discovered. Marcus sat down heavily in a chair. After all the waiting and uncertainty, it was finally real. What happens now? He asked. Now, Dr. Hartman said. We talk about how you want to sell them. I have contacts at several major auction houses who would be very interested in your collection. Marcus looked at Danny, who was listening to every word. Their difficult journey from the eviction notice to this moment seemed impossible to believe. Dr. Hartman, Marcus said, we're going to need some time to think about all this. Of course, she said. This is a life-changing decision. Take all the time you need. After Marcus hung up the phone, he and Danny sat in their cabin in stunned silence. We did it, Danny finally whispered. We really found something amazing. Marcus hugged his son. No, Danny. William Chen did the amazing thing. He created something beautiful that lasted long enough for us to find it when we needed it most. Outside, their cabin, the Montana mountains, looked the same as always, but inside everything had changed. They were no longer struggling to survive. They were about to become wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. The news that the paintings were authentic spread quickly through the small town, even though Marcus and Danny had tried to keep it quiet. Small towns have a way of finding out about big news, and this was the biggest news the town had seen in years. People Marcus barely knew started stopping by the hardware store to congratulate him. Some wanted to know if he would invest in their businesses now that he was going to be rich. Others just wanted to shake his hand and say they had known him when he was poor. How does it feel to go from having nothing to being a millionaire? Asked a reporter who drove up from the city to interview them. Marcus thought about the question carefully. We never had nothing, he said. We had each other, and we had hope. The money is wonderful, but it doesn't change who we are. The reporter wanted to take pictures of Marcus and Danny in front of the cabin. The contrast was dramatic. A father and son in simple clothes standing in front of a small, partly fixed cabin, soon to be worth millions of dollars. What will you do with all that money? The reporter asked Danny. First, we're going to finish fixing our house, Danny said. Then my dad says we're going to help other people. Dr. Hartman called several times to discuss how to sell the paintings. 3 major auction houses in New York wanted to handle the sale. Each one promised to get the highest possible price. Sotheby's thinks the collection could bring in as much as $7 million, Dr. Hartman told Marcus. Christie's estimates $6 to $7 million. The third house is being more conservative at $5 to $6 million. The numbers were so large that Marcus had trouble understanding them. He had gone from having $127 in his bank account to potentially having $7 million. What's the best way to handle this? Marcus asked Sarah, the lawyer. I recommend selling the paintings through whichever auction house gives you the best terms, Sarah said. But Marcus, you need to think carefully about what you want to do with this money. This kind of wealth can change people's lives in good ways or bad ways. Marcus knew she was right. He had heard stories about people who won the lottery or suddenly came into money and ended up worse off than before. I want to make sure Danny can go to any college he wants, Marcus said. I want to finish fixing up our cabin and make it beautiful. And I want to help other families who are struggling like we were. Danny had his own ideas about the money. Dad, what if we keep one of the paintings, just one, so we can remember William Chen and how his art saved us? Marcus thought this was a good idea. They chose the painting that showed the view from their cabin. mountains and trees and sky that looked exactly like what they saw from their front porch every morning. The auction was scheduled for December, 3 months away. That gave them time to get used to the idea of being wealthy and to make plans for their future. Marcus continued working at the hardware store even though Bob told him he didn't need to anymore. "I like working here," Marcus said. "It keeps me grounded. Besides, what would I do with myself all day?" Danny continued going to school and spending time with his friends. Emma was excited about the family's good fortune. "You're going to be famous," she told Danny. "They might write about you in magazines." "I hope not," Danny said. "I just want to keep being normal." But normal was getting harder to maintain. People from the art world started visiting the cabin. A documentary filmmaker wanted to make a movie about their story. A publisher offered Marcus money to write a book about finding the paintings. "It's getting a little crazy," Marcus told Tom one evening. They were sitting on the cabin's front porch, which Marcus had finally finished repairing. "Money changes things," Tom said. "But you seem to be handling it well. You haven't let it go to your head." "I keep reminding myself that 2 months ago, I was worried about where Danny and I would sleep. The money is amazing, but our real treasure is that we found a home here." As the auction date got closer, Marcus started making more concrete plans for their future. He hired a financial advisor who helped him understand how to manage a large amount of money wisely. "The key is not to spend it all at once," the advisor said. "If you invest most of it carefully, you can live off the income for the rest of your life and still have money left over to help others." Marcus also started researching charities that helped single parents and homeless families. He wanted to make sure some of the money went to people who were facing the same struggles he and Danny had faced. The week before the auction, Marcus and Danny flew to New York to see the paintings displayed at the auction house. It was Danny's first time on an airplane and his first time in New York City. The paintings looked different hanging in the elegant gallery. They seemed more important somehow, surrounded by fancy lighting and thick carpets. "Look, Dad," Danny said, pointing to a small plaque next to their painting. "It says, 'From the collection of Marcus and Danny Thompson.'" "That's us," Marcus said, still hardly believing it. The auction preview attracted hundreds of people. Art collectors, museum curators, and wealthy people who collected paintings all came to see the newly discovered William Chen works. "These are extraordinary," said one museum director. "We've been looking for Chen's lost paintings for years. This is one of the most important art discoveries of the decade." Marcus watched people admire the paintings and felt proud. Not proud of the money they would bring, but proud that William Chen's beautiful art was finally getting the recognition it deserved. The night before the auction, Marcus and Danny had dinner at a fancy restaurant in Manhattan. They felt out of place in their simple clothes, but the waiter treated them like royalty because he had read about them in the newspaper. "Dad, are you nervous about tomorrow?" Danny asked. "A little," Marcus admitted. "But mostly I'm excited. Tomorrow, William Chen's paintings will find new homes with people who will appreciate them. And we'll have enough money to help lots of other families," Danny added. "That's right. We'll be able to turn our good luck into good luck for other people." The auction was held in a large, elegant room filled with well-dressed people holding paddles with numbers on them. Marcus and Danny sat in the front row, watching as other artworks were sold for thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Finally, it was time for the William Chen paintings. The auctioneer introduced them with great ceremony. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now present 7 recently discovered works by William Chen, hidden for decades and authenticated as genuine examples of his finest work." The first painting sold for $420,000. The second went for $380,000. Marcus watched in amazement as the prices climbed higher and higher. By the time all 7 paintings had been sold, the total was $5.2 million. After the auction house took their commission and the various fees were paid, Marcus and Danny would receive about $4.1 million. "Congratulations," Dr. Hartman said, shaking Marcus's hand after the auction. "You've just had one of the most successful art discoveries in recent history." Marcus felt overwhelmed. $4 million. It was more money than most people made in their entire lives. That evening, they celebrated with a quiet dinner in their hotel room. ordering room service and eating while looking out at the lights of New York City. What do you think William Chen would say if he could see what happened today? Danny asked. Marcus thought about the sad entries in Chen's journal, about how the artist had died thinking his work was worthless. I think he would be amazed and happy that his paintings brought so much joy to so many people today, Marcus said. And I think he would be glad that they helped us build a better life. Danny nodded. When we get home, I want to hang his painting in our living room where we can see it every day. That's a perfect idea, Marcus said. They would fly home tomorrow to their small cabin in the Montana mountains. They would be millionaires now, but they would still be the same father and son who had taken a chance on a $50 cabin and found much more than they had ever dreamed possible. Outside their hotel window, New York City sparkled with a million lights, but Marcus found himself looking forward to getting back to their quiet cabin, where the only lights at night were the stars that William Chen had looked at while he painted his beautiful pictures so many years ago. 6 months after the auction, Marcus stood on the front porch of their cabin and looked at how much their life had changed. The cabin was beautiful now, with a new roof, bright windows, and a wraparound porch that overlooked the mountains. But the changes went far beyond just the building. Danny was thriving in ways Marcus had never imagined possible. The boy had always been smart, but now he had access to opportunities that money could provide. He was taking art lessons from a teacher who drove up from the city twice a week. He had a computer and fast internet so he could video chat with his old friends and learn about anything that interested him. "Dad, look what I painted today," Danny said, running up the porch steps with a canvas in his hands. It was a landscape of their mountain view, painted in the style Danny was learning. It wasn't as good as William Chen's work yet, but it showed real talent and love for the art. "That's beautiful, son," Marcus said, and he meant it. The cabin itself had been transformed into the home they had always dreamed of. Marcus had hired local workers to help with the bigger projects, but he and Danny had done much of the work themselves. They had learned skills they never knew they had, and working together had made them even closer. The main room now had comfortable furniture arranged around the stone fireplace where they had found the paintings. William Chen's mountain landscape hung above the mantel, a daily reminder of how their fortune had been found. Danny's room was bigger now, with space for a proper bed, a desk for homework, and shelves for his growing collection of books. Marcus had his own room too, the first time in years that he had a private space of his own. But the most important changes were not in the cabin. They were in the lives of other people that Marcus and Danny had been able to help. Marcus had started a foundation called the Second Chance Fund. It helped families who were facing eviction or homelessness just like he and Danny had been. So far, they had helped 37 families find new homes and get back on their feet. "Every family deserves a chance to start over," Marcus had said in a newspaper interview about the foundation. "We were lucky enough to find our second chance in an old cabin. We want to help other families find their second chances too." One of the families they had helped was a single mother named Maria and her 2 children. Maria had lost her job and was about to be evicted from her apartment. The Second Chance Fund helped her pay rent for 6 months while she found new work and got back on her feet. "You saved our lives," Maria had told Marcus when she came to visit the cabin with her children. "We were going to be living in our car." "We know exactly how that feels," Marcus had replied. Danny had started a program at his school where he taught other kids about art and the importance of following your dreams. He told them about William Chen and how the artist never gave up, even when no one believed in his work. "Sometimes the most important thing you create is the thing nobody understands at first," Danny would tell the younger kids. "But if you keep working and believing in yourself, someday people will see how special it is." The town had changed too. The publicity from finding the paintings had brought tourists who wanted to see where the great discovery had happened. This brought money to local businesses and helped the whole community. Bob hired 2 new people at the hardware store because business had increased so much. Tom started a carpentry business that specialized in fixing up old cabins and historic buildings. Even Mrs. Patterson at the library saw more visitors who wanted to research local history. "You finding those paintings was the best thing that happened to this town in 50 years, Bob told Marcus one day. Marcus continued working at the hardware store 1 day a week, even though he didn't need the money anymore. He enjoyed the work and the conversations with customers. It kept him connected to the community and reminded him of where he had come from. On this particular evening, as Marcus watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and pink, he thought about how far they had traveled from that desperate night when he had found the cabin listing online. Danny came out and sat beside him on the porch swing they had installed. "Dad, Mrs. Garcia asked me today if I miss our old life in the city," Danny said. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that I miss some things, like my old friends, but I wouldn't want to go back. This is home now." Marcus agreed. The city seemed like a different world now, full of noise and rush and stress they no longer needed to endure. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't found the paintings?" Danny asked. Marcus considered this. "We still would have been okay," he said. "It would have taken longer to fix up the cabin and life would have been harder, but we had each other and we had this beautiful place. We would have made it work. But we wouldn't have been able to help all those other families." "That's true. Finding the paintings gave us the chance to help others, and that's been the best part of having money." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. "I got a letter from the art museum in Denver today," Marcus said. "They want to do a special exhibit about William Chen next year. They're calling it The Lost and Found William Chen's Hidden Masterpieces." "That's so cool," Danny said. "Will our story be part of it?" "Yes, but more importantly, people will learn about William Chen and see his beautiful art." That's what he always wanted. Marcus had donated one of Chen's smaller paintings to the museum so that people could see the artist's work even if they couldn't afford to buy it. The museum had created a scholarship in William Chen's name for young artists who couldn't afford art school. "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" Danny said. "What's that?" "I wonder if there are other William Chens out there, artists who are creating beautiful things right now, but nobody knows about them yet." Marcus smiled. His son was growing up to be thoughtful and caring, always thinking about other people. "I'm sure there are," Marcus said. "Maybe someday we can help them too." They had already started doing that. The Second Chance Fund had a special program for struggling artists, helping them with studio space and art supplies while they worked on their craft. As the evening grew darker, Marcus thought about all the people whose lives had been touched by their discovery, the museum visitors who would see William Chen's art, the families who had received help from their foundation, the young artists who were getting support to follow their dreams. "Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of what we've done?" Danny asked quietly. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. He still missed Sarah every day, but he felt her presence strongly in moments like this. "I think she would be incredibly proud," Marcus said. "Not just because we found the paintings, but because of how we've used our good fortune to help others. That's exactly what she would have wanted us to do." Danny leaned against his father's shoulder. "I wish she could see our cabin now. She would love it here." "She can see it," Marcus said. "Every time you paint a picture or help another kid at school, every time we help a family in need, she's right there with us." The next morning, Marcus woke up early and made coffee in their beautiful new kitchen. Through the window, he could see deer grazing in the meadow beyond their property. In the distance, the mountains caught the first light of dawn. Danny came downstairs in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in all directions. "Morning, Dad," he said, pouring himself a glass of orange juice. "Morning, buddy. What do you want to do today?" "Can we work on the garden? Emma's coming over later and I want to show her the new flowers we planted." They had created a large garden behind the cabin, with vegetables and flowers that attracted butterflies and hummingbirds. Danny had discovered that he loved gardening, almost as much as he loved painting. After breakfast, they went outside to tend the garden. Marcus weeded the tomato plants while Danny watered the flower beds. It was simple, peaceful work that reminded Marcus of all the good things in their life that had nothing to do with money. Tom drove up the driveway in his truck, coming to help Marcus install some new shelves in Danny's room. "Beautiful morning," Tom called out as he got out of his truck. "Every morning is beautiful up here," Marcus replied. As they worked together, Marcus reflected on how much his relationship with work had changed. Before, work had been desperate and exhausting, something he did just to survive. Now, work was satisfying and purposeful. Whether he was helping at the hardware store, working on the cabin, or managing the foundation, everything he did felt meaningful. That afternoon, several families that the Second Chance Fund had helped came to visit. They had a potluck picnic on the cabin's large lawn, with kids running around and adults sharing stories about how their lives had improved. Marcus watched Danny playing with the other children and saw how naturally the boy included everyone, making sure no one felt left out. The challenges they had faced together had taught Danny compassion and resilience that would serve him well for the rest of his life. As the sun set on another day in their new life, Marcus and Danny sat on their porch once again. This had become their favorite time of day when they could talk about what had happened and what they hoped for tomorrow. "Dad, I've been thinking about what I want to be when I grow up," Danny said. "Oh yeah? What have you decided?" "I want to be an artist like William Chen